Hey, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight as we continue moving forward with the book, The Medium's Book by Allan Kardec, the second book in the series. And we are on chapter 3. In the last live, we did chapter 1 and 2. So just to remind everyone what's in the chapters of part 1, chapter 1, we talked about, are there spirits? Chapter 2, we talked about the extraordinary and the supernatural. And now today we're going to talk about the methodology and the theories of being a medium. So let's get to it. And then at the end of the live, I'll make sure to answer all of your questions. Okay? Here we go. Methodology, chapter 3. One very natural, praiseworthy desire that adherents have, and which should always be encouraged, is that of winning converts. To make their task easier, we now intend to examine what we believe are the surest means to realize this objective without wasting any useless efforts. We have stated that Spiritism is a complete science, an entire philosophy in and of itself. Those who would desire to become thoroughly familiar with it must first of all submit to a serious study of the subject and become persuaded that, more than any other science, it cannot be learned without commitment. As we stated earlier, Spiritism applies to all the issues that interest humankind. It is an immense field, and we must above all consider it as to its consequences. Its foundations undoubtedly consist in the belief of spirits, but such belief does not make a knowledgeable spiritist any more than a belief in God makes a theologian. Thus, let us see what might be the most suitable way to proceed in its teaching in order to most effectively bring about conviction. Adherents need not be frightened by the word teaching. It is not solely the product of the lecture stand or podium, but it is also occurs in simple conversation. Every person who tries to persuade another by means of explanations or experiences teaches. What we want is for the teaching effort to produce results. And that is why we believe our task should be that of providing a few words of advice that may be equally beneficial to those who want to learn by themselves. They will find the means herein to most surely and quickly reach their goal. It is generally believed that in order to be convincing, it is enough to simply present the facts. This would certainly appear to be the most logical approach, although experience has shown that it is not always the best, because we frequently encounter individuals who are not at all convinced by the most obvious facts. Why is this? That is what we shall try to determine. In Spiritism, the matter of spirits is secondary and successive. It is not the starting point. And this is precisely the error in which one falls, and often the reason for one's failure with certain people. Since spirits are simply human souls, the correct starting point is therefore the existence of the soul. How could materialists accept the existence of beings that live outside the material world when they believe themselves to be only matter? How could they believe that there are spirits all around them if they do not believe there is one within them? It would be pointless to amass the most tangible proofs right in front of them. They would contest all of them because they do not believe in this principle. Every teaching methodology must proceed from the known to the unknown, and for the materialist, the known is matter. Thus, before anything else, you should start with matter and try to show and convince them that there is something within them that is outside the laws of matter. In a word, before trying to make them spiritists, try to make them spiritualists. To do so, however, you need another order of facts, and you must proceed in a special form of teaching via other means. If you talk to them about spirits before they are even convinced that they have a soul, you are starting at the end point. And since they cannot accept the conclusion if they cannot accept the premise. Therefore, before trying to convince disbelievers, even by using facts, It is advisable to make sure of their opinion concerning the soul. That is, determine if they believe that it exists, that it survives the body and retains its individuality after death. If their response is negative, it will be a waste of time to talk to them about spirits. That is the rule. We are not saying there are no exceptions, but if there are exceptions, there would have to be some other reason for those particular persons to be less resistant. We must distinguish between two classes of materialists. In the first class are those who are theoretical materialists. There is no doubt in them, but rather absolute denial, arrived at through their own reasoning. In their view, humans are nothing more than a machine that functions while assembled, and which breaks down and leaves only a skeleton at death. Their number is happily quite restricted, and they do not represent an openly declared school of thought. We do not need to point out the deplorable effects that would result for the social order if some such doctrine were popularized. We have dealt with this matter quite sufficiently in the Spirits book. When we stated that disbelievers stop doubting when faced with rational explanation, we must make an exception of radical materialists who deny every power and any intelligent principle apart from matter. Most of them hold to their opinion out of pride and belief that they must maintain it out of self-respect. They persist in it in a spite of all evidence to the contrary because they do not want to lose faith. Nothing can be done with people like these. No one should be fooled by their false expression of sincerity when they say, "Show me and I'll believe." Then again, there are those who are more honest, who bluntly say, "Even if you show me, I won't believe." The second class of materialist, which is much more numerous than the first class, since materialism is an unnatural sentiment, includes those who are such out of indifference and, we might add, out of a lack of something better. These have not deliberately chosen materialism, and their greatest desire is to believe, for they are tormented by uncertainty. They feel a vague aspiration about the future, but this future has been presented to them in a light that their reason cannot accept. Hence, their doubt and their disbelief. For them, disbelief is not based on any kind of theory. As soon as you present them with something rational, they will eagerly accept it. They are capable of understanding us, since they are closer to us than they might suppose. With the first group, do not talk about revelation or angels or heaven, because they will not understand you. Instead, place yourselves on their own turf and prove to them, first of all, the laws of physiology are powerless to explain everything. The rest will follow later. The situation is otherwise when disbelief is not preconceived, because in that case, belief is not completely non-existent. Rather, it remains a latent sprout that has been choked by weeds, but which a spark can bring back to life. These individuals are like blind persons who have received their sight and are happy at seeing the light, or like a shipwreck victim who has been tossed a life preserver. Let's take a pause for just 1 second because my husband is here with my pizza and my happy juice. Thank you. And his disembodied hand has delivered. Thank you so much. How are you, disembodied hand? How are you feeling tonight? Good? How is the state of the world? Not too great? Have you tried that new flavored beer, that seltzer beer lately? How do you think of that? What do you think of that? All right. Thank you, disembodied hand. All right. Not to be eaten all up in your stuff, but your girl hasn't eaten all day, and I'm only human, so we're going to do this while we read. So, cheers. Let's take a moment. If you have tea, take a sip. Oh, this is good, disembodied hand. Delicious. Okay. Let's keep it moving, shall we? Alongside the materialists per se, there is a third class of disbelievers who, although they are at least spiritualists in name, are no less resistant towards Spiritism. These are ill-will disbelievers. I have met them. I know who he's talking about. They would feel annoyed if they had to believe because they feel that it would interfere with their tranquility in materialistic pleasures. They are afraid that their ambition might be condemned, along with their selfishness and the human vanities that they love to indulge in. They shut their eyes in order not to see, and they plug their ears in order not to hear. We can only pity them. So, as not to fail to mention it, we will point out a fourth category that may be called self interested or bad faith disbelievers. They know very well what to think about Spiritism, but they openly condemn it for personal interest reasons. We have nothing to say about them, nor anything to do with them. If radical materialists are in the wrong, they at least have good faith as an excuse. We can correct them by showing them their error. But with this last group, there is a bias that turns all arguments to dust. Time will take care of opening their eyes and will show them where their true interests lie, perhaps at their own cost, because being unable to hinder the expansion of truth, they will be swept along by the current, together with the interests they had sought to safeguard. In addition to these overall categories of opponents, there are many nuances among which may be counted. Disbelievers out of cowardice, who will find courage when they see that others have not been harmed by Spiritism. Disbelievers out of religious scruple, whom have enlightened study, will teach that Spiritism is supported by the very fundamentals of religion itself, that it respects all belief systems, and that some of its effects are the awakening of the religious sentiments in those who do not already have them, and the strengthening of them in those who are irresolute. Additionally, there are disbelievers out of pride, out of a contrary spirit, negligence, frivolousness, etc. Let us not forget a category we shall call disbelievers out of deception. It includes those who have gone from being exaggeratedly confident to disbelief because they have suffered deception. Thus, being disheartened, they have abandoned and rejected everything. They are like those who deny Spiritism in good faith because they feel they have been misled. This is nonetheless the result of both an incomplete study of Spiritism and a lack of experience. If there are those who are deceived by spirits, it is usually because they ask them improper questions, or ones that they cannot answer, or because they are not enlightened enough to distinguish truth from error. Also, many people see Spiritism as a new form of divination and think that spirits exist for the purpose of fortune telling. In fact, frivolous and mocking spirits do not waste the opportunity to entertain themselves at these individuals' expenses. Thus, they promise girls that they will find marriage and assure the ambitious that they will receive honors, inheritances, and hidden treasures, and so on and so forth. The result? The frequent and unpleasant deception that serious and prudent persons always know how to avoid. The most numerous of all the classes, but which cannot be included among the class of opponents, consists of hesitant individuals who are usually spiritualists out of principle. Most of them have a vague intuition about spiritual ideas, and they aspire towards something that they are not quite able to define. They only need to coordinate and formulate their thoughts. Spiritism appears to them like a ray of light, the clarity that disappears, the fog. Consequently, they avidly embrace it, for it sets them free from the anguish of uncertainty. Sorry, I gotta pause. This drink is delicious. Oh, so good. If we now take a look at the various categories of believers, we will first discover those who are spiritists without realizing it. Properly speaking, these are a variety or nuance of the preceding class. Even though they have never heard of the Spiritist doctrine per se, they have an innate sentiment about the grand principles that result from it. And this sentiment is reflected in certain passages of their writings and discourse to the extent that if you listen to them, you would believe that they were true initiates. Many examples of these individuals can be found among sacred and secular writers alike, and among poets, orators, moralists, and ancient and modern philosophers. Among those who have become convinced by directly studying the subject, we may distinguish: number one, those who believe purely and simply in the manifestations who consider Spiritism to be a simple science of observation that demonstrates a series of more or less curious phenomenon. We call them experimental Spiritists. Number two, those who see in Spiritism more than just phenomenon, who understand Spiritism's philosophical aspect. They believe in the morality that results from it, but they fail to practice it, and the doctrine's actual influence upon their character is thus insignificant or none at all. They do not change their habits, nor would they deprive themselves of a single pleasure. Misers remain miserly, the proud remain full of themselves, the envious and jealous remain aggressive. They see Christian charity as nothing more than a pretty maxim. They are imperfect spiritists. Third, those who are not content with only admiring spiritist morality, but who practice it and accept all its consequences. Since they are convinced that earthly existence is only a temporary trial, they try to take advantage of such brief moment to advance on the path of progress, the only one that can lead them to a higher position in the spirit world, endeavoring to do good and subdue their evil tendencies. Friendship with them is always safe, for their firmness of conviction keeps them from all thoughts of evil. Charity is the rule of conduct among them, and these are the true spiritists, or better still, the Christian spiritists. And four, finally, there are the fanatical spiritists. The human species would be perfect if it always preferred the good side of things. Exaggeration in any way is harmful, and in Spiritism, it produces a blind and often childish confidence in the manifestations of the invisible world, leading some very easily and uncontrollably to accept what reflection and examination would show to be absurd and impossible. Fanaticism does not think, it dazzles. These adherents are more noxious than useful to Spiritism's cause. They are less capable of being convincing since their judgment is rightly distrusted. They are easily fooled by fraudulent spirits or by persons who try to exploit their gullibility. And if they were the only ones who had to suffer the consequences, the harm would not be so great. But the worst outcome is that, without meaning to do so, they provide disbelievers with more reasons to ridicule Spiritism than to be convinced by it, and they do not fail to impute to all the foolishness of a few. Obviously, this is neither fair nor rational, but it is well known that Spiritism's adversaries only recognize their own reason as genuine and care little about fully understanding the object of their consideration. The means of conviction vary considerably among individuals, and what persuades some will have no impression on others, even though one person may be convinced by certain physical manifestations and another by intelligent communications. Most are persuaded by reasoning. We could even say that for the most of those who still cannot appreciate Spiritism through reason, the physical phenomenon will have little impact. The more extraordinary the phenomenon in the way they seem to depart substantially from known laws, the more opposition they encounter, and for a very simple reason. We are naturally led to doubt anything that is not sanctioned by reason. All will consider them from their own point of view and offer their own individual explanation. The materialist attributes to them a purely physical cause or a hoax, and the ignorant or superstitious person to a diabolical or supernatural cause. However, an explanation that is prepared beforehand has the effect of destroying preconceived ideas and showing at least the possibility, if not the entire reality, of the fact, which is thus comprehended before it is seen. So, by accepting the possibility of a fact, three-fourths of the conviction has been realized. Will it be of any use at all to try to convince obstinate disbelievers? We have already stated that this will depend on the cause and nature of the disbelief. Our instance in trying to persuade them often leads them to believe in their own self-importance, which in turn leads them to even more obstinate. Those who neither convinced by reason nor phenomenon still have the trial of disbelief to endure, and we must leave to Providence the task of leading them on the path of more favorable circumstances. There are too many other people who desire to receive the light for us to waste our time on those who reject it. Therefore, direct your efforts towards those of goodwill, who are greater in number than you might think. For example, that's a weird sentence. Your example will overcome any resistance more easily than will mere words. True spiritists never lack an opportunity to do good. Afflicted hearts to relieve, consolation to offer, desperate emotions to calm, moral reforms to instill. This is their mission, wherein they will find true satisfaction. Spiritism pervades the atmosphere. It is expanding because of the very force of circumstances and because it enables those who profess it to be happy. When its theoretic adversaries hear it resounding all around them, even among their own friends, they will come to grips with their isolation and will be forced either to fall silent or surrender. In order to proceed with the teaching of Spiritism in the same manner as occurs in other ordinary sciences, it would be necessary to review the entire string of phenomenon that may be produced, starting with the simplest and then progressing successively, to the most complicated. However, such would be impossible because one cannot take a course in experimental spiritism as if it were a course in physics or chemistry. Can I pause right there and just sort of reiterate that? Because nothing pisses me off more than experiential mediums. These are people who go to special schools to become mediums and learn the Spiritist doctrine and have this like elitism and this like attitude that drives me mad. So let's say it again. It would be impossible because one cannot take a course in experimental spiritism as if it were a course in physics or chemistry. So sit your mother effing ass down. When studying the natural sciences, one is dealing with raw matter, which can be manipulated at will, and the effects may almost certainly be controlled. But with Spiritism, one must deal with intelligences who are gifted with freedom and who are at very instant prove that they are not at all to our capricious whims. Thus, it is necessary to observe, to await the results, and reap them as they occur. That is why we vehemently state all those who would flatter themselves by imagining they can obtain results at will are nothing more than ignorant persons or impostors. That is also why true Spiritism will never put on exhibitions or resort to stage shows. It would, moreover, be illogical to suppose that spirits would ever take part in such exhibitions and submit themselves to research like objects of curiosity. Hence, the phenomenon may not occur at the most desired moment, or they might occur in a much different way than what we intended. We might add further that in order to obtain them, we need persons who are endowed with special faculties, and such faculties vary widely, very widely, depending on the aptitude of each person. In addition, since it is extremely rare for one and the same individual to possess all the various aptitudes, the difficulty increases due to our always having to have a truly complete collection of mediums at our disposal, which in and of itself would never be possible. The way to remedy such an inconvenience is really quite simple. One only needs to begin with theory, wherein all phenomenon are reviewed and explained, and wherein one can recognize them and understand the possibility that they will occur and can know about the conditions under which they may be produced and the obstacles that may be encountered. In this way, whatever may be the order in which the circumstances lead us to witness them, nothing will come as a surprise. And there is a further advantage that is sparing those who wish to work alone from many deceptions. Being aware of the difficulties ahead, being aware of the difficulties ahead of time, they can stay alert and spare themselves from gaining experience at their own expense. Since the time we began to concern ourselves with Spiritism, it would be difficult to determine the number of people who have approached us, And how many among these remained indifferent or disbelieving when confronted with the most obvious phenomenon, only to be convinced later through a rational explanation? How many others were predisposed to accept Spiritism through their reasoning, and how many finally were persuaded without having witnessed anything at all, but were led to it because they comprehended it? Therefore, we speak from experience, and that is why we have affirmed that the best method of teaching Spiritism is the one that is geared toward the reason and not the eyes. This is the method we use in our lessons, and for which we congratulate ourselves. So what he is saying here is, so this first part of the book is talking about sort of spreading the word. It does have a very like Christian-esque vibe to it, spreading the word. But what he's really saying is like, even if you're just a solitary spiritist, even if you're just doing your thing, there's no point in trying to put on a show for someone or try and prove yourself. It's simply better to talk about the doctrine, to talk about your experience, to give those instances life so that you can connect to another human being through their own reasoning and through their own understanding, because that is the doorway to opening them up to the path. And then let the rest happen naturally. Because at the end of the day, we are all on the path to enlightenment, but everyone is on a different pace. Everyone is at a different level. And you can't force the spiritual evolution of someone who just isn't ready to get there yet. But you can plant a seed. You can have a conversation. You can awaken something. You can relate to someone's humanity through your experiences. And those are the moments that allow someone to say, I wonder what else is out there. And that's all you need. Curiosity of the mystery is everything. And this is what mainstream monotheistic religions do their absolute best to try to deter people from. This idea of questioning the mystery, this idea of wondering what else is out there, this idea of being okay with not knowing everything and with the abyss. That is not comfortable for mainstream religions who want you to be scared of the unknown, who want you to be scared of the abyss, who want you to be scared of the darkness so that they can have control of you. And what Spiritist is saying, go check out the darkness, go check out the abyss, because I can guarantee you there's nothing scary on the other side of it, because we've seen it, we have experience in it. Go ahead, go. You know what I mean? So let's keep going. So studying Spiritist theory beforehand has a further advantage in that it immediately shows the grandeur of the goal and the scope of this science. Those who first come to watch a table turn or produce raps may be inclined to ridicule it, since it is difficult to imagine that a table could give rise to a doctrine meant to regenerate humankind. We have always noticed that the fact that, rather than being superficial, those who believe without having seen, but because they have read and comprehended, are the most thoughtful, connecting more with the foundation than the form. They see the philosophical aspect as the most important and the phenomenon per se as only the accessories. They have stated that even if there are no phenomenon at all, the philosophy in and of itself is the only one that can resolve the many problems that until now have been unsolvable. The only one that offers the most rational theory concerning humankind's past, present, and future. Thus, they prefer a doctrine that correctly explains matters to one that does not explain them or that explains them badly. Whoever would reflect on the issues will clearly understand that one could disregard the manifestations without the doctrine itself having to disappear. The manifestations corroborate and confirm the doctrine, but they do not comprise its essential foundation. The serious observer does not reject them, but on the contrary, waits for favorable circumstances that will allow him or her to witness them. Our progress is proven by the fact that before even hearing about the manifestations, many people have already an intuition about the doctrine, which merely come to embody their ideas in a coherent whole. Nevertheless, it would be correct to say that those who begin with only the theory lack knowledge of the object of practical observation. So now we're getting into the flip side of it. It's like, okay, cool, you got the philosophy part of it down, but let's not completely disregard the practicum. Let's not completely disregard the work that you have to do, and the things that you need to observe in order to solidify your beliefs, right? On the contrary, they do have such knowledge, and it carries more weight than if the phenomenon were produced right in front of them. These involve the numerous occurrences of spontaneous manifestations, which we shall deal with in following chapters. There are few persons who do not know about them, or who have at least heard of them, and there are many who have experienced them without having paid proper attention to them. The theory has provided an explanation for them, and we consider such incidences to be highly important when they are supported by irrefutable testimony, since one cannot attribute any kind of preparation or con- connivance, there he is, connivance, to them. Even if artificially produced phenomenon did not exist, spontaneous ones would not fail to occur. And if Spiritism only served to explain them rationally, that would be quite enough. Thus, most of those who read beforehand report their relocations of such phenomenon, which are for them a confirmation of the theory. From our point of view, it would be a mistake to suppose that we have ever recommended that the factual incidences be neglected, since it is through such incidences that we arrived at the theory. It is true that we had to devote ourselves to an assiduous task that took several years and thousands of observations. However, since these incidences have served us and continue to serve us daily, it would be inconsistent on our part if we contested their importance, especially now that we have written a book to make them known. We are merely affirming the fact that apart from reason, they are not enough to lead to conviction, that a prior explanation for them, which removes prejudices and shows that they are not contrary to reason, predisposes them to be accepted. No, not convenience. It's like conniving, like being a charlatan. That's what he was trying to say here. Sorry. This fact is so certain that of 10 individuals who are totally new to the matter, who watch an experiential session that followers might regard as having been quite satisfactory, 9 will leave unconvinced, and perhaps a few of them will even more skeptical than before because the experiments did not correspond to what they had expected. But just the opposite will happen with those who comprehend the manifestations prior who comprehend the manifestations through a priori theoretical understanding. Such an understanding will serve them as a means of control, and nothing will surprise them, not even an unsuccessful experiment, because they will know under what conditions the phenomenon may be produced, and that they must not ask for something they cannot be given. An understanding of the manifestations beforehand enables them not only to be aware of all the anomalies, but also to capture innumerable details and nuances that are almost always extremely subtle, and which will serve them as elements of conviction that could easily escape the ignorant observer. These are the reasons that have led us to admit to our experimental sessions only those persons who have been sufficiently prepared to comprehend what occurs there, because we are convinced that any others would be wasting their time or would cause us to waste ours. For those who desire to acquire this preliminary understanding through our works, we recommend the following order. Pay attention, y'all. Number 1, you need to know what is Spiritism. This booklet of only 100 pages or 100 pages or so presents a summary of the principles of the Spiritist doctrine. So there is a pamphlet out there that Allan Kardec had made way back in the day. It's a very thin pamphlet, like 10 pages, and it's called What is Spiritism? You could probably find it online, I'm not sure, or maybe there's a distributor who makes them, but these are pamphlets that kind of summarize everything, and you don't have to read these ginormous books to really get that the summation of it, you know? Anyway, it gives a general overview that enables one to see the whole in a condensed picture. In only a few words, one can ascertain its objective and judge its scope. Furthermore, it presents the principal questions or objections that newcomers are usually inclined to raise. And such an initial reading, which requires but little time, is an introduction that will facilitate a more in-depth study. So that's number one. Number two, now you want to read the Spiritist book. So that was the book that we read, that we just finished together. And you guys, again, can go back to my YouTube channel and go through all those chapters. So that's the next step in this process, to truly say that you can sit in on a session and watch these anomalies occur and truly have a true understanding of how it all is going down. So reading the Spirits book. And this book contains the complete doctrine as dictated by the spirits themselves and contains their entire philosophy and all its moral implications. It reveals humankind's destiny and provides an initiation into the understanding of the nature of spirits and the mysteries of life beyond the grave. By reading it, one comprehends that Spiritism has a serious objective and that it is not a frivolous pastime. Number three, you want to read the Medium's book, and that's the step that we're on right now, you guys. So I'm taking you through the steps, all right? You're on step 3, okay? And the Medium's book is intended to guide those who wish to become involved with the manifestations and provides an understanding of the most appropriate means for communicating with spirits. It is a guide for both mediums and evokers and supplements the Spirits book, all right? Step 4, and this is the last step, the Revue Spirituelle. So remember, he's French. I'm not French. Hopefully I didn't butcher it, but that is a journal. And it is an assorted collection of phenomenological incidences and theoretical explanations and separate excerpts which supplement what is found in the other previously mentioned works, somewhat comprising their practical application. It may be read simultaneously with the others, although it will be more profitable and especially more intelligible if one reads it after having read the Spirits book. That is the suggested order as far as we are concerned. However, those who want to understand a science completely ought to read everything that has been written about it, or at least about its main principles. And they should not limit their reading to just one author. They should even read the pros and cons, the critiques, as well as the defenses, and learn about the different theories in order to be able to judge the comparison. In this respect, we neither recommend nor criticize any work because we do not want to influence anyone's ability to form his or her own opinion. In adding our brick to the building, we only find our own particular niche. It is not our responsibility to be both judge and litigant, sorry. And we have no foolish pretense of being the only ones capable of spreading the light. Rather, it is the reader's responsibility to separate the good from the bad and the correct from the erroneous. What I love about Allan Kardec is just his push to academia. Because let's not forget, this man was an academic. He was part of science committees and he was a professor, and this guy was a skeptic. He was not even a religious man before he came into this world and was confronted by these spirits. So for him to still hold on to his intellectualism and say, no, don't just believe this shit blindly. Research everything, anything and everything that has to do with spirit manifestation through the lens of science, philosophy, mathematics, whatever you can get your friggin' hands on. Learn it so that this stuff makes sense to you, because it's already written in a way that if you don't already have that previous knowledge, it's going to just go right over your head. I remember a lot of us, when we were reading the Spirits book in the previous videos, he was talking about quantum physics. He was talking about nanobiology. He was talking about electromagnetism. He was talking about shit that, like, for his time really wasn't invented yet, or at least it was at its infancy in the scientific world. And he was talking about it as if it was like just common knowledge. Like, this is just the shit that it is. You know what I mean? So that's what he's saying. Okay. So the next chapter is theories. Let me see how many pages. It's a lot of pages. I do not think that I'm going to get it done in 15 minutes. I'm going to be honest with you. So we are going to stop here and just know that the next chapter will be the theories of Spiritism and the science and philosophies behind that will inform those theories, okay? So do you guys have any questions for me? Let's see what we have here. When you say confronted, did the spirits initiate the contact with him originally? Technically, yes. So the story goes that he a father had two daughters who were mediums, and his father basically was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, like, you know, you're a scientist, like, can you help? And like the man was completely ignorant, like he didn't know one science from another, like it was just like, can you help? And so of course Alan Kardec was like, this is weird, I mean, I'll check it out, but this is weird. And these little mediums who were like the age of like 9, they were like little girls, never met him, fucking read him for filth, knew all his shit. And it kind of just went from there. I mean, that's one theory. Another theory was that there was a woman, a very well-known psychic. And remember, this was also during the time of the French, like, spiritualist movements where like people were table tipping and like getting like, you know, Houdini was like a big deal, and like everyone was into all the fun magic shows for the theatrics of it all. And so like he was a scientist and a teacher who was kind of walking through a city that was just filled with all of these entertainments, if you will, and he was just kind of like, oh god, and he just was going until he stumbled across people that knew their shit. And they weren't just people telling him things, they were people channeling spirits. So the spirits were speaking through them. So in an essence, to answer your question, yeah, the spirits contacted him. Yeah. In essence. Hi guys. Oh man. Any other questions? How are we feeling? How about TikTok? How about YouTube? How about Facebook? Facebook user, let me know your name because it's only showing up as Facebook user. But hi. Yeah, for sure. And also there's a movie on Netflix, Kathy. There's a movie on Netflix. I don't know the name of, I want to say the movie is called Alan Kardec, not quite sure, but it's a pretty good summation of his life and what he went through. A couple of exaggerations, but great movie. Definitely check it out. Oh, Madrina, hi. Oh, I'm glad you stopped by. Blessings, Rob. Yay, you're on TikTok. See, I knew you were gonna start getting addicted to it. I knew it. You just had to dip your toes. You had to dip your toes in it. That's all. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. On Sunday, I am going to be interviewing live on Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to be interviewing J. Allen Cross. He's a new and upcoming author who wrote the book American Brujeria. It just came out. So I'm going to be interviewing him on Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you guys stop by, ask your questions. I'm excited. You know what I mean? He seems like a really great guy. I got a chance to talk to him for a little while. Really, really nice guy. So make sure you stop by Sunday, same time, same place. And hi, Diana. Wow, that's like the first time someone's ever requested that of me. Am I becoming famous with my 3 people on TikTok? Yay! People want me to say their name. That's hilarious. I love it. All right, guys, have a beautiful, beautiful night. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. So see you next Thursday for chapter 4, and I'll see you this coming Sunday to interview J. Allen Cross, American Brujeria, YouTube, Facebook, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love you guys so much. Have a beautiful night. Many blessings. Loose.